let's go straight into this 3 states model that I mentioned earlier. So first of all, anger is very important. It is a normal emotion. We've evolved to use anger, to need anger. It energizes us when we need to be energized. It helps us to be assertive. It helps us to speak up, speak out if something feels wrong, and stand up for ourselves. If we didn't have anger, we wouldn't be able to do that. The thing is that we need to know how to regulate that emotion. We need to have it, but we need to be mostly in control of it rather than the other way around. And that is really hard when you're little, especially when you're really little. Your emotion center of your brain is very much in charge. The thinking part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is very underdeveloped, and the connections between that and the emotions part of the brain are extremely underdeveloped as well. So you have the big emotions, but you don't have a thought process to jump in and say, oh, it's okay, maybe I should just take a step back for a minute, or maybe it's not as bad as I think. Or at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, but even definitely right up to 11, emotions are very much in control, and it's very much a work in progress. So you're going to be, I'll come back to this in a minute, but you're going to be very much co-regulating your child. So in other words, being alongside them and helping them regulate their emotion until they can one day do it themselves. And another thing to mention, which we'll come back to as well, is teachers and other adults around your child are going to need to do that as well. So we need to know how to regulate it so we can help our child to regulate it as well. And it takes a long time. It takes many years, and many adults struggle with it. Perhaps they haven't had that support in the early years to learn emotion regulation. So this 3 states model helps us to understand anger and figure out in a very concrete and clear way how to regulate it.
Just to say, if you move the slide on, we can't see the 3 states model at the moment.
Yes, I have moved it on. You can't see it?
It's just come up now, so yeah, that's fine.
Oh, okay. So what we know, this comes from Professor Paul Gilbert, who is, I would say, the kind of father of a type of therapy called compassion-focused therapy, which is something called a third wave therapy, a group of therapies that have come after cognitive behavioral therapy and are related to it, but have built on it. And there are 3 states that we can be in at any one time, in essence. Sometimes we can be in between these 3 states, but pretty much there are only 3 states. This is what Professor Gilbert says. And they are the drive system, the soothing system, and the threat system. So the threat system is when we feel really angry, we've completely lost it, or terrified. So it's severe anxiety or anger, when the fight or flight survival response has kicked in and we feel as though we're in danger. Where in evolutionary terms, it was to keep us alive, to make us very alert to threats. But in our modern world, it can keep us alive, but also it can get triggered very easily. And also it can get triggered by what I call our stress cups getting filled up by very little things. So for a child, it might be a different teacher, a substitute teacher in the morning, and then something happens in the playground and they don't get to play with the game that they want to play. Something else happens, and then 5 different things happen, and then that triggers the threat system. So it's not that their life is at risk or their survival is at risk, but it's just that their brain has decided that it's just overwhelmed and it can't take any more. The examples here are probably for a slightly older child, maybe an 11-year-old plus, but you get the picture. And we don't want to be in that threat system very often. And that might be why you're here, while you're watching this. You might be feeling that your child is in that threat system more than they should be. And I would say, as a rule of thumb, perhaps we wouldn't be in that threat system, that red, more than maybe 5 to 10% of the time. Would you agree with that, Hannah?
Yeah, it can be quite physically and emotionally exhausting to be in that red because your body is on such high alert. So yeah, we want to try and minimize the time that we're in that state.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so the other two states, we need to divide our time between those two, really, and making sure we spend at least as much time in the green, the soothing system, as in the blue. So the blue drive system is when we're in our ready to learn mode at school, that focused mode that teachers love, when everybody's sitting still on the carpet or in their chairs and they're listening. That's drive system. So it's a positive state generally. Or it might be when you're in a test and you're, oh yeah, I know what this question is and I know what I need to write. You're not distracted. There's a bit of cortisol, the stress hormone, keeping you alert and awake, but nowhere near as much as with the threat system, where you've got cortisol and adrenaline working to make you safe. So yeah, adults use it as well when we're driving, when we're in an important work meeting or a job interview. We're in this state quite a lot of the time. And so a lot of the time in school, we're in this state. But ideally, we would have rest breaks in school, because to be in this state for 7, 8 hours, or maybe 6 hours at a time, would still be quite a lot. It would still be quite tiring on our system. And we could also, when we're in drive system too long, we tip over into threat system quite easily, because if we're fatigued, if our brain's a bit overloaded with it. Ideally, we would have breaks at school where we truly feel as though we're going into the soothing system, where we can just run around or do art or do something that's really soothing to our nervous system. So the soothing system is also known as rest and digest. So this is where it doesn't have to be alert, that the nervous system doesn't have to be alert because of needing to focus on anything or because of danger. It can truly rest, and that means that internally it can focus on processes like digestion and just recuperating and recovering from the red and the blue. And green soothe system, we feel safe as well. We feel safe and comfortable. So we don't want to be in this green system all the time. We don't want to be too comfortable and too in our comfort zone. We might get a bit bored and we wouldn't feel that we achieved much. So we want to combine it with the blue. The secret, though, as I've already touched on, is not spending too much time in the red and knowing when we're getting towards the red and knowing how to come out of the red, as well as how to switch between the blue and the green. So it's this kind of flexibility to move between systems. And this is something that your child, whether they're 5 or whether they're 11, probably isn't going to be very good at. But particularly if they're 5, they're not going to be good at all, and they will need you to almost completely do this for them.